and welcome to another how-to video with the Kurzweil K27. In this video, we'll be having a look at the CC step sequencer. The step sequencer is one of those highly customizable and must-know features that allows you to expand the sonic possibilities of VAST in a quick and efficient manner. To put it simply, the step sequencer uses rhythmic patterns or sequences to trigger changes to any parameter you can think of. And this can be done using MIDI CC messages or continuous control. These stepwise patterns can be used to automate things like filters, panning, modulation, and effect parameters, so pretty much any aspect of the sound you're working with. You can have 4 of these sequences within a single program, each with its own independent controls, shapes, and parameters. As we go through the video, we'll first be looking at what the step sequencer even is for those who are completely new to this feature. For the second half of the video, we'll be setting up our own sequencer pattern from scratch, which is going to show you all the controls you need to know to use this feature as a part of your own programming journey. And also, all of this applies to other similar Kurzweil models as well, that is, the ones with a step sequencer on it. So whether you have a K27 or one of these similar models, all of these same steps are still going to apply. So feel free to follow along as we explore this feature together. First, let's go over to the front panel here in the arpeggiator section. You'll find a soft button labeled for the step sequencer. You can use this to turn the sequencer on and off as you're playing. So if the button lights up, it means your step sequencer is active. And of course, all the programming and editing aspects of the step sequencer are going to be found in edit mode. But first, before we get into program edit mode, let me show you what the step sequencer even sounds like for those who are completely new to this. So I'm going to call up this factory synth patch. I'm going to play it first with the sequencer disengaged and then engage it so you can hear the difference as I'm playing. You would have noticed how turning on the sequencer brings in all of these moving elements that are changing in real time without me actually touching any controllers. We mainly have changes in panning and this rhythmic effect on the filter. It's almost like a tremolo effect where the filter is opening up and closing back down. All of this is simply a pattern being played by the sequencer that sends changes in MIDI values. So at each step in the sequence, the sequencer is going to send a particular CC value between 0 and 127. These automatic changes in MIDI values create all of that motion you hear. So you can set up the sequencer to use any rhythm you want. You can select what parameter you want that to have an effect on. For example, filter cutoff, changes in pitch, or effect parameters like the amount of reverb. You can then customize what real-time changes in MIDI value you want at each step in the sequence. And you can have up to 64 of these steps before the sequence loops and plays back. You can have 4 of these sequences at once, each with its own parameters and settings. So with all of this in mind, let's build a sound together. For this example, we'll be programming the step sequencer from scratch in edit mode using all the controls we have for the sequencer. We'll be turning this pure sounding KB3 organ patch into a moving electronic sounding instrument. So I've got my organ sound selected. Using the sliders, I'm going to disengage all the drawbars except for drawbar slider number 1. Now, let's get into edit mode. So I'm pressing edit and then using the soft buttons here to find the step sequencer page. So I'm going to turn the sequencer on now by either using the state dialog box on the screen, or you can press the step sequencer button on the front panel. So we've opened up the sequencer in a default state. We can see some default settings here, including a pattern which is shown in the visuals at the bottom of the screen. We can move to this visual area using the arrow keys. Each one of these steps that you see in the pattern is going to be labeled with the step number and the MIDI CC value being sent for that step. This value is going to go up to 127. So we can change the value for each step using the number pad or the scrolling wheel. You can navigate to the step you want using the arrow keys. So we have 4 steps in the sequence by default. We can change this by going up to the Number Steps dialog box. This lets you select how many steps all 4 sequences are going to have. The Sequence dialog box lets you select which one of the 4 sequences you're actively editing. Right next to it, the Sequence State box lets you select that actively selected sequence on or off. The box labeled MIDI CC shows you what parameter the actively selected sequence is affecting with this pattern. So for now, the default is the slider level for drawbar 1. You can use the scrolling wheel to move through all the available parameters. So without doing anything, keeping all the default settings, let's listen to what the sequence is doing to drawbar 1. Now the sequence pattern that you're seeing here by default is a user pattern, and we can see this in the Mode dialog box. So while in user mode, we can control the MIDI value for each individual step any way you want. So each step in the sequence could have a different CC value. We can also choose to skip any of the steps. As we saw earlier, you can do this using the scrolling wheel, the arrows, and the number pad. But beyond that, we have some other modes we can choose from to make the step sequencer behave differently. So the visual here gives you an idea of what the pattern is doing and how it's affecting MIDI values through each step in the sequence. So let's put that in action. I'm going to select the random mode for drawbar 1. So with that, each step is going to have a randomized value. And we can also see this visually. So let's listen to what random mode sounds like. So a mode like that is going to be useful to have some variation in the pattern, and that's exactly what I'm using it for. Next, the note value box here selects the rhythmic note value for each step in the pattern. So 1/4 here means each step is going to be a quarter note. And of course, that's going to be linked with the master tempo clock. So I'm going to change the note value here from quarter notes to eighth notes. So let's listen to what that changes. So that's good enough for sequence number 1. I'm going to move to my second sequence now. Again, I'm in the Sequence dialog box and changing the actively selected sequence. Now in the MIDI CC box, I'm going to hold Enter and move slider number 3. Now, I've got this sequence acting on the level for drawbar number 3. So I'm going to stay in user mode for this one. So I'm going to move down to the visuals and enter some values here. So what I'm going for with this is alternating between high and low values for the 4 steps in the sequence. I'm using the arrow keys, scrolling wheel, and the number pad. So let's listen to what this sounds like together. Now we can also assign a physical controller to modulate the scale and add values for the sequencer. So add simply adds a particular number to the MIDI value being sent. Scale, on the other hand, affects the range of values being sent. So let's say you have a scale value of 50%. The range of values gets halved, which means CC values are going to be sent between 0 and 63 instead of 127. So assigning a controller in the Scale mode dialog box lets me control the scale value in real time using a physical controller as opposed to having a fixed value. So while I'm in the Scale mode dialog box, I'm going to hold Enter and move the second slider here. So this slider now controls the scale value, but also controls the level of drawbar number 2, which we haven't used yet. So here's why I did that. Now as I bring in the level of drawbar number 2 by pulling it down, I'm also going to be affecting the scale value of the sequence affecting drawbar number 3. So as I'm moving slider number 2, I'm also affecting the range of values being sent to modulate the level of drawbar 3. I'm also going to set the scale value at 60%. So physically, slider number 2 is being shared by both the level control for drawbar number 2 and the scale mode control for the sequence affecting the level of drawbar number 3. So let me show you what this sounds like, and notice what's happening as I move the second slider. So I'm going to move to sequence number 3 now. I'm going to select drawbar 4 in the CC box. So I'm simply holding enter and then moving the slider. Let's try a different mode for this one. So ramp low high is the one I'm going with. If you look at the visuals here, it's going to show you how the value goes from low to high and then resets. So moving to my fourth and final sequence, I'm going to select the MIDI CC as reverb amount. Just like all the other sequences, I'm moving to sequence state, turning the sequence on, and then moving to MIDI CC to select the parameter I want that sequence to act on. So I'm simply scrolling till I see reverb amount. So I'm going to stay in user mode for this one. So the values I'm entering here are going to affect the amount of wet reverb at each step. This is just to get a little variation in space. So we're done setting up the 4 sequences. Remember, we've made no changes to the patch itself, so the only change to the organ sound is whatever's being done by the step sequencer. So let's listen to what this KB3 organ sounds like now. So with that, we have 3 independent sequences, each with a different rhythm affecting drawbar levels. We also have a scale mode control for one of the sequences and automation on the reverb unit using the 4th sequence. The only other customizations we haven't touched on yet that I want to talk about quickly before leaving you are the sync options. So let's go to the sync dialog box. So with these sync options, we can decide how the sequence starts and how it resets to the beginning of the pattern. So with this default free run option, the sequencer resets when it reaches the end of the pattern. So with the every note option, the pattern resets at the end of the sequence, but also when a new note is played. With the all keys up option, the pattern resets at the end of the sequence, or it can also restart when all the keys have been released. An amazing use of the step sequencer is when you combine it with the arpeggiator. In that case, I'd recommend using the ARP sync option here. So with this, the sequencer only comes on when the arpeggiator is turned on, and again resets at the end of the pattern. With all of these sync options, you're simply telling the sequencer how it's going to restart. Another box here that we didn't need for this example is MIDI Destination. This is simply if you want to send the CC message or the sequence to a different destination through things like USB or MIDI. So when you're in multi-mode, choosing the zone option means the sequencer is going to affect the actively selected zone. Since the example was in program mode and not multi, and we were only sending changes in CC value to the program, we didn't need to change anything in this dialog box. So once you're done with all of this, you can save the step sequencer pattern and select it anytime you want using the first dialog box here. We can skim through all the factory sequences here and find our user patterns at the end of the list. Also remember to save the program before you fully leave edit mode. With that, you'll be saving the step sequencer settings as a part of the program as well. And that's pretty much whatever you need to know about the step sequencer to get started. Hopefully you found this video useful and can try some of these features out for yourself. You can also find a download link to the organ program we saw in the video description. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.